Hi, everyone. Welcome to the inService podcast, where we feature some of the industry's leading minds in service, field service, customer experience, and supply chain. I'm Jacqueline Cooksey here with the Service Council, and today's discussion is focused on using data to identify, enact, and reinforce change. We are live today, but the live stream will be converted into a podcast, and you can find that podcast wherever you typically get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, etc. And I'd like to invite our listening audience to jump in with questions, comments, insights on the topic. You have your comment box there. Please make this as interactive as possible. All right. Well, without further ado, allow me to briefly introduce Juan Cruz Jr. Juan, thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Jacqueline. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So if you don't mind, please just introduce yourself, maybe a little personal, professional background for our audience.
Sure. Well, thank you, Jacqueline. Again, pleasure to be here. Juan Cruz Jr., I'm the Director of Service Operations North America for Haemonetics. I've been in the medical device space for 24 years, specifically in service. I have worked for several companies throughout my career. All great companies, many companies that everyone's probably heard of. And during my career, in the 24 years, I've seen a lot of change. But one thing that really kind of remains consistent is really the importance of data that I know we'll be talking about today.
Awesome. And if you could maybe just introduce to Haemonetics for us and, share with us what's a day in your life like as Director of Service Operations North America.
Sure. So Haemonetics, we are a global leader in blood management technologies and services. We provide innovative solutions, to our healthcare providers and their patients to help them deliver the highest quality of care. Chances are, if you have donated either blood to the American Red Cross or plasma to a plasma collection center, you have been hooked up to one of our devices, either to collect red blood cells or whole blood, or like I mentioned, plasma. As the Director of Service Operations for North America, I'm responsible for leading a team of about 62 employees in management and individual contributors in field service, project management, phone support, training, back office who manage our service contracts and paid service. And they all support our customers across the United States and Canada.
Awesome. Sounds like you wear a lot of hats too. That's great.
Yeah.
So let's dig into the topic a bit. So if we could maybe we'll frame today's discussion into sort of those three critical areas. We have the identifying, enacting, reinforcing change. So let's start with, an icebreaker on the use of the term data, what that means to you and at Haemonetics. And then the first part of today's discussion too, with that identifying portion. So what are those sources of data that Haemonetics looks at? And if you could just provide an example of how data usage can enable a critical function of the service business.
Sure. So I think one crucial thing to define is, data. I know that a lot of times we use the words data and information interchangeably, right? To me, information is that big blob mass of ones and O's. It's really unstructured. You really can't make heads or tails out of it just yet. Versus data where now it's taken some form, some shape, and you can take some action on it. When it comes to identifying data, that can come from many sources, right? Some of the more critical sources of data, it could be customer feedbacks through surveys. It could be from CRM systems or ERP systems. It could even be from maybe a specific solution that you've established for one of your teams within your service operation. So There are different sources and warehouses of data and systems that you can get it from.
Gotcha. And maybe you can sort of dig in further too about, what's the process that Haemonetics goes through to actually acquire this data? Who's involved in that process? You touched a little bit on what some of those tools are that you use, whether that's the CRM, some customer surveys, things like that. But if you could just sort of talk a bit more about the acquisition there and who's involved.
Sure. So before I get to that, just one more piece as we talk about identifying data. I know you had asked about, probably an example. One of the key things that we do is use customer feedback, right? Surveys to identify areas where we can improve our service experience. And to elaborate there, we use a third party provider who does the surveys for us, and it gets pretty interesting because I'm the type of person, I get all the surveys, right? I like to read every single survey because I like to pick out, okay, what are the main pain points that the customer is experiencing, right? Because they have an opportunity to provide some feedback, just not just the number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever the case may be, and how they're rating you. So it's very, to me, it's very critically important that, as those surveys are coming in, that I read, what are the pain points that the customer is experiencing when they have to interact with our service and support group. Because sure, they can rate you in communication great or not so great, but doesn't tell the whole story. So you really have to look at what are those comments that the customers are putting in the survey. So I just want to kind of elaborate there when it comes to customer feedback. The other piece is that the third party service provider that we use for customer surveys, we do both customer satisfaction and Net Promoter Score. They do an awesome job of being able to consolidate the data, put it in a very actionable form. They create KPIs. So again, it's very useful to drive, obviously, improvement in our service experience. So I just want to kind of give you an example in regards to customer survey data that we use. Acquiring data, the process of acquiring data varies. It really depends on the source. As I mentioned, we use CRM systems, we use ERP systems. In the CRM space, our engineers, for example, they might use the mobile app, and that's how they collect all the service reports, all the interactions they had with our customers on site. And we use a variety of systems, again, and tools to acquire data, including Salesforce, Oracle, and then we also use Tableau, Power BI. Although we're moving away from Power BI, we use Tableau more often these days. That takes all that data, those data streams, whether it's from Salesforce or from Oracle or from some other standalone solution, and you put that on Tableau, and you're able to really create some very descriptive data models that you can also put into KPI form, and even probably more importantly, in an actionable format.
Gotcha. I can only imagine it probably feels at times that you have data coming out your ears. But
it's a lot, and I was already mentioned that we can kind of talk about that, right? Because I think it's not unique to me. I'm sure, and I know it's not unique to me. It's a challenge I've had across the different organizations that I've worked with, where there is a lot of data. And you got to have the right tools to be able to put it in a format that at least at a minimum in a descriptive way, right? We can talk about predictive and prescriptive, but if we keep it to the core of what we're trying to do with data, right? we're trying to get the data to describe something to us, right, as service leaders, as business leaders. But a lot of times you have to make sure, am I using the right data, right? Am I getting the right attributes on the data? Because there is so much of it. And because the data, a lot of times, again, as I'm sure I'm not the only one that has had these challenges, but one of the challenges is that, data siloed, right? So we just talked about CRM system, ERP system, and then you add other systems in there. Now you have multiple warehouses of data, and sure, there's some connectivity, there's some integration within those systems, but not everything gets passed back and forth, right?
Right.
Service operations, for example, they might rely specifically on Salesforce as our main system because of CRM, and we might be getting something coming over from ERP system, but not everything, right? So that's always the challenge, right? So the different silos of data. And just to expand a little bit more, I know kind of went on a different topic, but it's all related to data. Another challenge is, do you have the right resources in place who can analyze that data, right? I think some companies or most companies have a service analytics team, right, that can put that data in a very digestible way. I think one of the challenges that leaders have is that, you mentioned it earlier in the podcast, is that I wear many hats, right? So when you wear a lot of hats, chances are you're good at a lot of things, but you're not great at all of them, right? So when you have a good service analytics team that's able to take all this data from all these different repositories and make sense of it and put it in front of service leaders and business leaders, it makes our lives a whole lot easier, right? Because now we can see it in a way that's very descriptive, and we can hopefully put some action plans behind it. So again, a couple of the challenges, right, when it comes to data siloed, and just making sure you have the right resources, and making sure that's makes sense and that's actionable.
Right. Yeah, that got me thinking. We talked a lot at the symposium this year, too, about data and how do you analyze and the interoperability, between systems and things like that, and the ongoing challenge that creates. And it got me thinking too, as you move into the analysis, how great that you also have these customer surveys as well to sort of pair that qualitative side with the data analysis that you're doing. So it seems like you've got quite a surround sound approach when it comes to the analysis piece of this. So, okay, so we talked a little bit about analysis. So how much time does this take? Like you said, it's not just you, and I guess the way I'm sort of framing this, it makes it seem like there's a beginning and end, and I'm sure that it's sort of a continuous process. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So, learning from data, it's a never-ending process, right? I'm sure you've heard it said that, data is the lifeblood of any organization, right? So it definitely is the lifeblood of a service organization. So, the amount of time it takes to analyze the data, it really depends on, the complexity of the analysis, right? But we typically learn something new from our data, every day. I mean, again, just going back to the simple example of surveys, I think I get surveys every day, right? So as soon as I get that survey, I'm reading through it. I want to learn from it, and then also, sticking to the survey piece and all the data we get from customer satisfaction scores or net promoter score. We typically have with our third-party service provider an in-depth analysis of that data, what it's telling us. What's the good? What's the bad? What's the ugly? What are things that we can do to improve the customer experience? But it's in the word itself, right? Learning from the data. Old adage, and it's a cliche. You're learning something new every day. So that learning process, it's never ending, right? It just depends what it is that you want to learn that day. What business issue or business challenge or business opportunity presents itself, and you just really have to dig into that data and how can you use it to make obviously the focus is always the customer, right? We want to make sure that ultimately the customer experience that we deliver to our customers is a positive one, but it's also for our employees, right? Are we doing things well for our employees? Are we enabling? Are we tooling them, right? And ultimately, it's about delivering results for the company, right? So it's a three-legged stool, right? When it comes to data, because there's different stakeholders. But again, it's a process that's ongoing, and you just continue to learn from the data every single day.
I'm sure it's really an ongoing process, and so you've got the data, you've analyzed it. How do you then start to deploy that implementation of data to enact change? Whether that's strategically or tactically. Maybe you can provide an example of a process.
Sure.
Whether that's field worker productivity or
once we've analyzed data, we identify opportunities. Where are the opportunities for improvement, right? And we start there. We start to develop a plan to implement change. For example, again, just going back to customer satisfaction service and the data we get from there. There was an opportunity to improve a couple of things. Customers were concerned in regards to call quality, right? So we looked at the data, we looked at what was going on, and we implemented some change, and we actually implemented some, technology solution to help with that. A lot of times when you're looking at the data, it could be that you're either implementing a new technology, or you could be implementing a new process. You could also possibly be training employees in that new process. And then bigger scale, right? If it's a huge problem, it's a very significant problem, you're probably investing in brand new technologies to address the challenges or the opportunities that have been identified in the data.
So that kind of has me thinking too, you have to look, technology is a huge investment. If you are just looking at data, I assume you don't just look once or twice, but you're looking for patterns over time, right? Before you make a big investment like that. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit?
But yeah, absolutely. I when it comes to, there's a solution for every problem out there, right? And, I can't tell you how, nothing wrong with that, right? Because I like to feel the different solutions out there, right? But yeah, I get a lot of calls for different solutions, and we can help with, reduce your part spend. We can help with increasing our first time fix rate. So there's a plethora of solutions, driven by different technologies out there to help deliver a customer experience. One of the solutions that we currently have now, and we mainly use it on our phone support, is how can we address parts consumption, right? So parts consumption is a huge cost when it comes to service operations. And actually, you can pretty much ask any service leader, and the top two costs for any service operations is labor and parts. It's pretty much boils down to that. Sure, you have travel expenses there, but if you look at your top two costs when it comes to service operations, it's labor and parts. For all the organizations I've worked with, have always been the number two, one and two challenges. So we have a solution there on how we can mitigate, parts consumption because of our service model and certain product lines. Customers do their own troubleshooting, and if the troubleshooting requires parts, those parts are covered under an agreement. So those parts are sent out. So we do have a solution in place that, it takes the phone support agent through a process of troubleshooting that issue with a customer so that the right parts are sent out. And instead of sending 10 different parts, maybe it's just one part that the customer needs. Obviously, it drives different benefits. One, for the customers, they're getting the right part right the first time, and they're going to be able to fix the device correctly the first time. But the second piece is right. That's service operations. Depending what organization you're in, some more of a cost center, some are more of a profit center. But regardless, you definitely want to mitigate your parts consumption. So that's a solution that we currently have implemented on our phone support piece, and pretty soon we'll be really in the midst of also expanding that solution to our service engineers out in the field who can also benefit from this type of technology.
Wonderful. And I think you touched on this quite a bit, but how has the data reinforced, how has it reinforced other changes, critical changes across the organization?
Sure. Another way is just quality, right? We track and trend where are most our failures, right, for parts, or what those errors are we getting in our devices? What are the parts that that are being replaced for X, Y, and Z? Just recently we because of data, we improved the process of sending our parts back for investigation, which is extremely important, right? Service operations, we're in the front lines, right? We're in front of the customer, but we're also huge partners with quality, right? So when we go out into a customer location because of an issue and we see a trend, so we want to make sure that we take these parts and send them back for investigation. So that's another area that's helped us in, where we've been able to track and trend failures in a very consistent manner, and then to be able to get those parts back on a timely manner to our quality partners so they can initiate investigations and hopefully come to solution much quicker rather than later. And that also drives process change, right? I mentioned that solutions are great, systems are great, but a lot of times just making sure that a process, an SOP, is understandable. If it's not clear, it's made clear. Or if it's not existent, that you create one. So that's also how data has helped us. Making sure that from a quality perspective, we're doing everything that we can as a service organization to be able to partner up with our quality partners, because ultimately you want to make sure that if there are any issues that we're tackling them as quickly as possible so that our customers are least impacted.
Gotcha. So what I'm hearing, there's kind of a trickle down effect. It impacts one area of the organization, improves processes, efficiencies, ultimately, affects the end customer. Awesome. So I'm sure all of this hasn't been smooth sailing from end to end every single time. So what are some learning moments maybe that you can share when it comes to embarking on this process, or any sort of like pitfalls that you needed to avoid, any gotcha moments, that type of thing?
Yeah, so I mentioned it earlier, but I think one of the biggest learning moments really has been the importance that the data needs to be de-siloed. I'm not sure if that's a word, so I'm going to make it up, right?
Good for me.
I mentioned that data can exist in different warehouses, right? Service operations, for the most part, we're going to live in a CRM type of system. If you're manufacturing and probably finance, you're probably living more of an ERP system. And then I mentioned that you might have specific solutions maybe for a specific team within your service operation. So now you have 2, 3, maybe even 4, maybe even more data warehouses, and and they're somewhat integrated, but not fully integrated. But there might be a data attribute here in the ERP system that's not necessarily going into a CRM system, but you do need it to be able to make a a service operations related decision. So when you have data that's siloed and the integration is not full, now you have to take data from here, take data from there, take data from here. You got to massage it, you got to put it in Tableau, you got to put it in Power BI, etc., which takes a whole lot longer now to analyze, right? Because you got to take it from all these different warehouses and put it into one central tool to make sense of it. So I think just making sure that, for service organizations out there who have siloed data, to work with their IT partners and, and other stakeholders, and how can we de-silo this data so that we have a seamless stream of data across all the different departments and teams that need to look at that data to make a decision much quicker, right? Because it doesn't, I'm sure this is easy to, conclude, is that, the more siloed it is, right, the longer it's going to take you to come to a conclusion, right, to a decision point, and to a point where you can implement some change. So siloed data is always a challenge, right? I'm not going to say we're completely siloed, but definitely areas for opportunities to improve there. But one of the challenges that certainly service operations deal on a regular basis, probably no matter what company you're in at the moment.
Right. Yeah, we definitely hear that a lot from different service leaders, kind of regardless of the organization or the industry. It's always an issue, always something to overcome there. So let's think about the future a little bit. I got to get out my canned AI question. I feel like artificial intelligence is everywhere these days. So what's the next phase of growth for Haemonetics? Is AI a part of that? We talked about technology investments and all of that good stuff. So what are your thoughts there?
Sure. So AI is definitely in what we currently do use an AI-based tool. So that helps our phone support and for troubleshooting. I love technology, right? It's one of those things that you can implement to enable and enhance your team. So definitely AI is part of our tool set currently. And for the future, what I'm looking for is what more can we do with whether it's AI based or AR or VR or some other tool out there that can enhance the service operations in general. But I can tell you, from my perspective, that it's definitely something that we have currently implemented. But we're also looking to see, okay, what else can we do, right? I think it was the beginning of the year, maybe February, March timeframe, maybe a little bit earlier. I don't know, can't recall at this point, but it was the explosion of generative AI, right? Generative AI,
It's everywhere.
Chat GPT, Bard. You can look now, and there's so many AI generative based tools out there. It literally makes your head spin, right? So you really have to be very judicious, right, in terms of, okay, what do I really need, right? Because we can't be, I'll speak for myself because I said I love technology, I love tools, right? So I can't be a child in a toy store where I want that toy, this toy. No. What are my business challenges, right? Whether field service, phone support, what are my challenges, and really hone in, all right, on those key things that are, it's a customer pain point, it's an employee pain point, is an overall business pain point, and really make sure that you're selecting the right tools for that pain point, right? Because we no organization, no matter how rich they are, how profitable they are, there's not an unlimited budgeted money, right, to get
Right.
everything you need, right? So, but definitely something that we currently have implemented from an AI perspective, but also trying to see, okay, how can we level it up to the next level?
Yeah, absolutely. I sat in on one of the breakout sessions at the symposium, and there was the discussion too about making sure you really have that business case before you implement AI. Make sure you have it written down. I think everyone's very excited about sort of implementing and being ahead of the curve when it comes to artificial intelligence, but really making sure you have that refined before you shoot for the stars, I suppose.
Yeah, no, and that's key, right? Because when you're presenting to your boss or their boss, and I need $500,000 for this, well, they got to ask you, well, how big is the problem, right? Because
Right.
it has to be at least $500,000 big of a problem, right? You can't say, well, it's just nice to have because everyone is doing it, right? Because a lot of times we do that, right? I think a lot of times implementation of technologies, whether it's AI, AR, VR, whatever it is, I think it fails because I think our eyes just get bigger because everyone else is doing it, so we want to do it as well. When maybe the problem just wasn't big enough to make that huge of an investment. So,
yeah. Well, it sounds like you all have it down at Haemonetics, and that's great. And I wanted to switch gears just a little bit and talk about your advisory board membership. We're humbled to have you on the advisory board. What value is most important to you as far as your involvement with the Service Council Board?
Yeah, so it's great, being on that advisory board and just having a lot of leaders out there that at any point I can probably bounce off some business challenges or opportunities, right? Because we all have very similar challenges, but the way they're addressed might be different, right? Because businesses are different. They might be in the same space, but their products might be different. Their customers might be different. So even though the issues might be similar, how you solve that issue might be different. So trying to get it's good to be on the board so you can just bounce off ideas from other leaders who are experiencing a similar heartburn, right? And it's nice when they share those insights and those experiences. So it's, to me, I'm grateful for that. So I'm just grateful overall to having given the opportunity to be on the advisory board. And for me, just personal growth, right? Selfishly, right? It's nice to learn from other individuals, right? I don't know it all. I'll never be the person that says I know it all, but I do know that we have some very talented and very experienced individuals on the board that I'm sure if I reach out, I would get some good input from.
Yeah, and something that we hear a lot too is kind of regardless of the industry, whether you're in, healthcare or manufacturing, a lot of times all of the issues are very similar or even the same. So it's great to even have those different perspectives, I'm sure, regardless of where they come from.
Yeah.
Great. So I guess on an end note, tell me something a little bit, maybe a personal passion outside of work for you, or maybe just something you're looking forward to for the future.
Wow. It's I might be very I don't know, lame or boring, but my passion, let's see, football. It's probably my biggest passion.
Good to have this time of year. I'm with you.
Yeah, so it's I'm a huge Michigan fan, a big Buffalo Bills fan, so I'm gonna give it a go Bills and go blue shout out since you asked. But between work and the time that I do have to watch some football. That's, I guess those two things are my passion, right? Working for a great company like Haemonetics and being able to make a difference. And then when I do have some downtime, just being able to enjoy a good game of football.
I love it. I'm with you. I'm totally with you. Well, great. Well, thank you, Juan. Is there anything else you want to add to the discussion today? Otherwise, we'll close it down.
No, again, just thank you for the opportunity, and hopefully those listening out there got a little nugget in regards to data, and hopefully I was able to add some value. But no, thank you very much, Jacqueline. I appreciate you hosting this, and it's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here today and sharing some of these insights, super timely topic. So also Juan wrote a couple of blogs for us on the Service Council website. So if you want to hear more about his expertise and his background, definitely read up on those. And join us next time. We're going to welcome Neegan Patel from Neuron 7. And you can learn more about Service Council at servicecouncil.com. And as I said, don't forget, we turn these live interviews into podcasts. So check out the inService podcast at servicecouncil.com/podcast or wherever you typically consume your podcasts. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Think of a little floor.